Hello and welcome to today's episode of Activating Magic. I'm your host, Darla Ledoux. I'm so excited to share with you Jadah Sellner. Jadah is amazing. You heard her intro, and I know you're going to learn so much, especially around how to trust your magic rather than like pushing and hustling and trying to do all the things that we see online that we should do to have a successful business. I bought Jadah's anti-hustle guide, and it really was like so touching, the stories that you tell and the way you really walk your talk and introduce these ideas to business owners to slow down and take a beat and to know when enough is enough and to celebrate that. So I can't wait to dive in. Tell people your backstory, how you decided to do this, because you were making smoothies and you had a daycare. So like you've got this long entrepreneurial journey.
Yes, thank you. I'm like the backstory. I've been an entrepreneur for over 15 years now. And it's interesting because I think many people will always notice kind of the spike, right? And the overnight success. So Simple Green Smoothies was this health and wellness company where we grew our following to over 400,000 followers on Instagram and
Wow.
355,000 email subscribers. We generated $1 million in 2 years off of a product that was under
Wow.
$100. And so that's kind of the hockey stick moment and the highlight reel. And then it's
Yeah.
like, I always want to dig underneath the surface because that really kind of blew up between 2013 to 2015. And before that, my husband and I had moved to Kauai in 2008, which is when there was an economic recession.
Yes.
And we didn't know that all of this was happening. And we had a 13-month-old daughter and nobody was hiring. And so we moved to an island that we had never been to before on the island of Kauai. And so we had to create our own economy. Like we had to generate our income because no one was hiring us. So we had to look for solutions and opportunities on how could we make money while living on island. And so we started a company called Little Sprouts Playhouse. It was a play and learning center for toddlers. We had a Montessori inspired program. Our daughter got to participate in it until she didn't want to share us with anybody. And then we sent her off to a preschool next door. And my husband and I ended up fighting over money that we didn't have.
Mm.
Felt like we were working a million jobs on top of our own entrepreneur business and also not feeling super aligned with where our company had pivoted. And I think that's a super important
Mhm.
conversation to highlight is, people talk about product market fit. And we created a company and we had a vision, but then we had to pivot to what the market wanted. And then
Mm.
people were willing to pay us more for the thing that they wanted, but then we were no longer excited and aligned with that. And so we didn't have any more hours to give. Like, right, we didn't have the extra sourced
Mm.
energy to actually
Yeah.
allow this business to be sustainable. So we ended up closing down that business. We liquidated all of the assets and we moved from Kauai to California into my husband's parents' house. So I always say hashtag worst case scenario, living with your in-laws when you're a grown ass adult with kids and just having to rebuild, reinvent, restart, reimagine. And you would think that Simple Green Smoothies was like the next little entrepreneurial milestone, but I actually started a parenting blog before that
Mm.
that never made any money. It was negative. It was negative $2,000 and something, but it was really a launching pad of building a business online and being able to have that freedom of time and flexibility. And so my business and partner and I, who started Family Sponge, the parenting blog, ended up starting Simple Green Smoothies. And that's the company that took off and looked beautiful and big on the inside.
Mhm.
But I was burning out and hustling and being a walking paradox, right? Of having this wealth this health and wellness business of like live your most healthy, sustainable life. And here I am, like exhausted, fatigued,
Wow.
overworked, burnt out to try to help others live a like
Yeah.
meaningful and vital life. And so I feel like that gives you kind of a thread of those two companies. And then I ended up selling that company in 2016 to my business partner to pivot to what I do today as a business coach and the author of She Builds, the anti-hustle guide to grow your business and nourish your life. And I feel like that little moment, that pivot moment, is probably an invitation where we could explore around where I had to use my own intuition to make that decision, which was
Yeah.
really, really hard.
So a couple things I love how you said you had this vision for building little sprouts and then what people wanted was different, or they would pay you more for something different. And that temptation to go for the more money. How'd you decide at that point, like where your limit was? Was it when
Yeah.
your daughter said, I don't even want to go to school here, or was it something else?
Yeah. So there was like a buildup of things, right? Because I was definitely, I want to be a responsible entrepreneur, product maker, fit, product market fit. So we did pivot because we built this company where it was like, we have a place where kids play and their parents stay to play with them. And then they're like, we will pay you if you stay and play with our kids while we go away. And so that was the pivot and the shift that we made of basically we became kind of like childcare versus this is a parent and child indoor play space coming from California. That was very popular. And so we did the pivot. We were being responsible entrepreneurs and people were paying us money. We were sold out, all of these things, but we knew we weren't making enough money. And the reason why we knew we weren't was because we had to move out of our house that we were paying rent because we couldn't afford our house rent and our business lease.
Mm.
And so my husband, daughter, and I actually moved inside of the playhouse, which wasn't a house. Like it had one bathroom that we had to share with all of our kids and where the diaper changing table was. We were making food on the lanai, what you call a balcony, and on a hot stove plate, like all the things. Like, and our bed was on cinder blocks. Like it was just kind of that pivoting and trying to make things work. And so we knew that we had to increase our hours, right? Like, oh, we have to either take on more kids or increase. And my husband and I, like 4 hours a day, and we were done. We were just toast. Like we just didn't have any more. We can't take on anymore. And I think that's kind of something to pay attention to, right? Where these should be doable hours. And yet I feel so drained and fatigued, and I'm not looking forward to expanding this body of work. And so we're like, we don't want to do more. We cannot, like our energy won't allow us to. Where in my work now, it's like there's sometimes when I can have creative deep work sprints and I could be
Yeah.
writing for 12 hours, not all the time, but that's like a flow
Yes.
state that I can get into. And so that was kind of the needle mover for us of knowing we didn't have the energy and the output to actually take on more kids or to increase it from a 4-hour day to an 8-hour day. And it's like, we're working 4 hours a day, but we are so tired. We are so exhausted. And like my husband and I didn't want to be bosses of each other either. That dynamic wasn't working out as well.
You said being the responsible entrepreneur, and I'm just imagining that you have clients that come to you now that are like, it's the responsible thing to do to sell my soul or sell the time that I
Yeah.
really want to be sacred just for me. So we'll dive into that.
Yeah.
Um, so selling simple green smoothies, first of all, anytime anyone says they sold a business, I just think that's so badass. So congratulations. And I'm sure it wasn't an easy choice. How did your magic, your inner knowing, let you know like it's time?
Yeah. So there were several divine breadcrumbs along the way. Of course, you don't pay attention to those initial ones, but
Right.
one of the practices that I share inside She Builds, and also I'm happy to share with your listeners, like free access to this vision writing process that I do. when the company was at its height, like just we were on every podcast, we were featured in Oprah's O magazine, we were on CBS's The Doctor's TV show. And I had written my future vision of where I wanted to be 3 years from that date. And then I had never looked at it again. So I just kind of like planted this seed and put it away. And I got to this place where I was feeling more drained by the activities. Again, it's kind of, you'll see these recurring patterns where it's like, this doesn't feel as exciting as it did when I first started. And so I was starting to feel fatigued and just feeling like even I guess that product market fit, right? We had this one-to-many business where we were serving hundreds of thousands, even millions of people in the business. And I was craving intimacy. I wanted to like be with the people. I wanted to have more intimate conversations and smaller groups and in person and all of these things. But I'm like, well, but my business model, we sell digital products, where we send out emails and then, make tens of thousands of dollars and all of these things. And so there was a disconnect in my own energy, my own magic that I actually wasn't using in the business anymore. I felt like I was using it at the startup phase of growing the online community, building that relationship, that authentic community building. But then it got to that kind of like maintenance and systems and all of this. I loved leading my team. I loved that intimacy in that, but like there was no product maker fit. Like I no longer, the maker, me, Jadah, the visionary, no longer fit into that business model anymore. And I wasn't happy. I wasn't feeling joyful. I wasn't feeling inspired, and was trying to build all these like side little things. So that's another little sign when you're trying to get busy instead of building what's right in front of you, of trying to create these like distractions and pieces. It's like, oh, I'm not engaged with this work that's right in front of me, this opportunity. And there were a lot of questions of if I were to leave. So kind of fast forward, I read my future vision and all the answers were there, which like Simple Green Smoothies wasn't in my 3-year future vision. It was about serving women entrepreneurs who may also be moms, changing the world and leading retreats and workshops. And it was just not what the business model that I had built. And I remember going to my friend and mentor, Jonathan Fields, the host of the Good Life Project. And there was a certain time at the height of Simple Green Smoothies growth. And I was like, I want to do this coaching over here for women entrepreneurs. And it's like, I don't feel like it doesn't seem like the time is right now. And then I would come back a few years later and I'm like, I still want to do this thing over here, right? So it's this vision, this idea, this want and desire that does not go away. Because we do have shiny objects. There's moments where we squirrel and it's like, oh, that's fun. That's new. That's novel. And it's like when this vision, this calling keeps coming back to you and it doesn't go away. And when someone pushes back on it, you're like, no. That like, I feel called and compelled. And so I didn't let it go. I didn't let that vision, that desire go, but I kept kind of bringing it back. And then there was a moment when I was like, I need to sell my half of the company. I need to let my business partner run with it. But all my ego was tied up in that of not wanting to leave. And everybody, was like, you're crazy to leave. Like you've built something, you're sitting on a golden.
Okay, wait, who's everybody?
Okay, I'll say who everybody is. Well, everybody.
Like what type of people?
Coaches, mentors, friends. I have a friend who has a Instagram following of like millions of followers, really helped guide me in building our online following. We had a second book deal on the table. So we got a multiple 6-figure traditionally published book, and then we had a second one on the table. And so there were kind of two humans. One, my friend Nisha Moodley, she's like, don't write a second book about the thing you don't want to be known for. And I was like, okay, well, I don't want to be the green smoothie girl anymore. So that was just a little something. And like, we had another multiple 6-figure book deal on the table. So walking away from money,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Then there's like, but there's so much potential in this business and it can grow and scale even more, right? Like I built this email list
Mm.
and this social media following, and I had these fears of no one will invite me to speak on a stage again. Like I had the opportunity to speak on Chris Gilbo's stage of World Domination Summit in front of 3,000 people, which is actually where I met my lit agent for She Builds. No one will ever invite me to be on their podcast again if I'm not, lined up with Simple
Right.
Green Smoothies. If I remove the business that I built, then I am not worthy. I have no value to contribute. All of these stories were going on in my head. And so I'm like, so I don't want to leave the thing that is like sucking the soul out of me. And I feel so burnt out and I'm hustling 24/7 to make it work. That was such a tug and a pull. And then I had a conversation with Jonathan Fields again. And I said, am I crazy for leaving Simple Green Smoothie? So it's kind of like coming back again.
Mm.
And he's like, you're asking the wrong question. And the question is, can magic strike twice?
Ooh. Ooh.
And the answer is yes. And so that there was something in that really spoke to me of, oh, I have got to trust my own magic, like that I can create magic again. That Simple Green Smoothies isn't that one hit wonder business that, has that hockey stick moment, and really having to unhook my self-worth from my net worth, unhook my self-worth from the amount of social media followers and email and all of these pieces, right? And it's just such an interesting dance of how our fear and our ego and external validation and feedback can really tangle us and get us discombobulated around our own intuition, our own truth, and our desires. And so I was in that mess for a few years. It wasn't like a 3-month dance or a 6-month dance. I really extended the timeline of making that decision and then taking the action to really let it go.
What do you think was at the core of extending the timeline? Like, I think, was it, letting your nervous system catch up?
No,
Just
I
kind
didn't
of.
I didn't know about nervous system in 2016. No. It wasn't about that. It was all the things that I listed
The
out of
fear.
the external voices of
Yeah.
like, what are you doing? You're sitting on a golden goose, like a golden
Yeah.
egg, of like possibility, of the fear that no one would want to invite me on their
Yeah.
podcast and stages again, that I'm not worthy or valuable without this being kind of attached to this company of like, I am the co-founder and co-author of Simple Green Smoothies, right? There was something in that. And here's what we built, hundreds of thousands of this and
Yes.
millions of that, right? All of these external metrics, and also how we even built that business and that community was a philosophy that I stand behind, which is love over metrics. And yet that was the medicine I had to take, right? Of a right, like love over metrics, like love matters more than the metrics. But I was still super, super tied into the metrics and how that gave me some sense of validation and proof, like I am proof of concept that I am smart and I know things.
So true. Oh my gosh. And isn't it funny because no matter what, you still built that. Like that doesn't go away. That was you and is you. And then on to the next. I love this question. Can magic strike twice? And I'm sure you work with people like this. I do all the time. And I've been in it myself of I have to let some part of my identity die to really be more aligned with my soul and with my magic. And that's what I hear is like, okay, I'm willing to bet on me and who I am.
Yeah.
Who do you think you became in that process?
Yeah, I feel that there was a remembering of my resourcefulness and resilience and being able to reinvent myself, because I've been doing this my whole life, right? Of
Yeah.
of pivoting and also learning about my creative process and timeline, that I have this 3 to 5 year kind of incubation period of creation and output and service.
Yes.
And then there's an invitation of like, now it's time to grow and expand and evolve and dip your toe into something new. And it might not even look new on the outside, but it's there's reinvention happening underneath or beneath. And so when I pay attention to my creative cycles, right, of like the seasons of Little Sprouts Playhouse and then the season of Simple Green Smoothies, and when I look at it on a timeline, it's like this kind of 3 to 5 year when I sit with a body of work. And then there's this completion energy that comes with it, and then it becomes a capsule. That's why I really love writing books. Like writing Simple Green Smoothies, even though I didn't enjoy the process because I was hustling and working and writing 24/7 to make it happen, it felt like that was a completion and a capsule of that body of work that it could live on beyond me needing to stay in the company to continue the legacy. And the same thing with She Builds. Like, I'm like, I don't know how long I'll be a business coach. I'm a business coach right now, and I lead retreats and workshops, and I love guiding people through the visioning and the quarterly planning process and all those pieces. But I'm like, I know that there's going to be a creative, renaissance and a pivot and a something. So I better gather all of this knowledge and this wisdom and this experience so that someone else could have access at an affordable, accessible rate. And also so my daughter could like see that body of work too. And so to me, like, that's how I love to look at books. It's not even about the money for me. It's a capsule of and a kind of a photo of time of a season of my life. And I had to also of who I became and the journey was to sit in the unknown and uncertainty, right? Because I built a little bit of certainty in kind of building a coaching practice to step into over time, being kind of a primary income provider in my family. And then having to really just I don't have all the answers. And I'm in this identity crisis. I don't know who I am. Like, can we sit in the unknown and still move forward and still play and still experiment and still try things on? So there was a deep knowing in me in that, and that I knew there was another book in me, but it wasn't about green smoothies, and I didn't know what that book was. And it took me a really long time to get to She Builds and find her, in the creative process. And so I think learning how to sit with uncertainty and the unknown and the question of what do I want to be when I grow up, that just kind of doesn't go away for me.
Yeah. How did you find her? She Builds.
Yeah.
What was that process like? Or how did your knowing guide you to what the book wanted to be?
Yeah. So there was the process was very collaborative, which was really beautiful. And it was so different than Simple Green Smoothies because I was actually really resistant to writing a second book because of my first process felt really challenging and hard and tiring. And I was like, I will never write a book. I'll hire a ghostwriter to write the book. So I actually thought I'd ghostwrite it. I'd hire an editor. That's what people do and all of this. And I was working with an editor and they were like, you're a good writer. You just need someone who can collaborate with you and play with you and help you kind of edit. And I have a lot of runway in my writing. So then I really made the decision of I'm going to write this book as the essence of who she is, which is anti-hustle, right? And so I will not hustle to complete this book. And I also will not put a monetary value. So I did shop my book. I had a literary agent, shopped it to traditional publishers, but I was really unattached to the outcome that I had to have another traditional published book deal. I would have sold this book for $5 and I would have self-published it if no one wanted it. I ended up getting a $200,000 book advance to write She Builds. And that's these little rewards that you get along the way of just following your intuition, and that magic path that unveils itself of being so unattached to the outcome
Yes.
or how you're going to get there. And I'm like, okay, thank you for gifting me for just like being unattached. This ever has to make a single dollar. It is a heart project. It's not a cash project. And then it was a heart project that turned into a cash project and fuels my business. Um, so then another part of the process was actually,
Can I
yeah,
underline, you
yeah,
said the book is anti-hustle, so it needs to be written in the energy of anti-hustle. And do you ever see this with your clients where it's like the title of the summit or the webinar or whatever, and then their being is not a match for that. And it's like, wait.
yeah,
So I think to me, that's why it's done so well for you is your commitment to the alignment. Does
yeah.
that feel true?
Yes, absolutely. So even some examples of that in the publishing process, because I love to get paid to write. So it was a great external
Yeah.
accountability. And I'm an ENFP. I'm a manifesting generator. I'm like, I've just got all of this stuff of like, are deadlines real? Not really, right? And so to embrace the anti-hustle process of writing this book, I had to have some conversations even with my editor of asking for more time. That's one of the things I talk about in the book
Yeah.
for people who tend to overcommit and say yes to a lot of things
Yes.
very quickly. And so one of the practices is to notice when you're running behind the timeline, but also you don't want to burn out in the process. So you ask for more time. You're transparent and in integrity of like, I know that I said I would turn it in by
Yeah.
this date. Some new information has come in. I don't want to burn out while I'm writing this book, and I actually need more time. I was a little ambitious with thinking I could write this in 6 months because I still needed to find the book in the process. So that of like asking for more time, and I did that at least 2 times. And then there was a third time, and now we're getting into like fear territory. And so it's actually like a little, when in the book, I talk about the cycle of fear. And this is us
Mhm.
kind of getting wrapped into hustle culture, which is forcing, exhaustion, avoidance, and rigidity. And I tend to land in the avoidance space of the fear
Um,
cycle. And so it's like, anti hustle, yes, ask for more time. And then when is it starting to become that you're actually in a space of fear and avoidance and not wanting to do the work? So sometimes we have that season where we actually need to push past the resistance. And sometimes we need to pull back and slow down and rest. And so I feel like one of the most important things is having coaches and mentors and friends, which I call like a support squad, to kind of call you out on your stuff. And so that almost third time where I was going to ask for another extension, that's when I had to actually get out of the fear cycle of avoidance and step into the writing process in a different way. So the hustle, even like the way that I was trying to write in a more socialized way of being a writer, which is get your booty in the seat and write
yes.
X amount of words for X amount of minutes every single day. Don't stop, won't stop. And so I was like waking up at 6 in the morning, writing for an hour. And I was doing it. Like I was matching the math of what a patriarchal standard of what a real writer looks like, right? Like a responsible writer, just like a responsible entrepreneur. I was trying to be that, but I wasn't getting the outcome and the results. And so the shift that I made when I was in my avoidance around the book was that I realized I am an immersive creator and I need to do creative retreats to do deep work because I'm also a mom. I'm a wife. I've been married for almost 20 years. I have a 17-year-old. And so there's so many responsibilities at home and
Yeah.
distractions. And to step away from my day-to-day environment and go really deep for several days. So I did several writing retreats within a month. I think I did 3 to 4 day writing retreats with the book, and I finished it. Like I finished the draft and got, you know what I
Wow.
mean? Like I didn't need to
Mhm.
ask for another 3 months or another 6 months. I just needed
Yeah.
kind of these 3-day creative writing retreats to do the deeper
Mhm.
immersive creative writing. And so that's how we kind of get out of hustle cultures, is the way that you're working.
Yeah.
And it wasn't. And that's the question. It's like, is the way that I'm working? And if it's not, find another way, and not
Mhm.
just follow the standard, right? Like,
Yeah.
there's other pathways to get the result that you want, and not just trying to be, like what I say, like a pressure cooker all the time, but allowing yourself to be
Yes.
a slow cooker and let stuff simmer. And then when it's ready, the ingredients are just like, okay, I'm ready to write, I'm ready for the words to flow.
Yes. I love that. And in the fear acronym in your book, right, you kind of go through each of
Yeah.
them and how people can get stuck in that
Yes.
cycle. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you feel like there's, and when you hear that, the forcing, exhaustion, avoidance, rigidity, do you feel
Oh,
like there's a,
definitely rigidity for me. Like it has
ah,
to be this way.
yes, like you're like, I made a plan, I said this date, this is so we've got to stick to the plan. The
Exactly.
rigidity will get you stuck in hustle culture, and the
Yeah.
forcing is the like go 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 mentality, just like don't stop,
Mhm.
got to keep pushing
Yeah.
it forward no matter what. We don't take a step back, we don't slow down.
So
And
that was
then
more the simple green smoothie
yes,
experience.
yes. And then you go into exhaustion, and you're so
Mhm.
tired and depleted and
Mhm.
fatigued. And you're like, do I even want a business? Do I just want to burn it all down? Like all these things, right? Because you're also not
Yes.
replenishing yourself. You're not taking breaks.
Mhm.
It's like when you're away from work, then you're with your family, all you're thinking about is work. And I just want to work on my work. And then when you're with your family, it's like, and then you're with your work, you're like, oh, I should be with my family. And so you're just in this,
Yeah.
there's sometimes we talk about burnout, but there's also like mental burnout too, where there's the rumination and constant
Mhm.
thinking and decision making that can
Yeah.
really exhaust us.
When you say that, I think there's no magic in that world because magic is in the present, right? It
Mm.
comes through in the moment. And if we're here thinking about that or we're there thinking about this, we can't access that. And we do it for, perfectly logical reasons like society, parenting, whatever beliefs that we created, but we can break free.
Yeah.
And you really help people with that. Earlier, you said self-worth over net worth. And I kind of wanted to circle back to that because one of the things that always has stood out to me when I hear you speak is around your enough number.
Mm-hmm.
And like, what is that enough number? And I definitely relate to almost like I had a solid pattern of just not knowing that I had enough. And like I really have always had enough. And I've developed such a faith, a muscle around trusting the universe that I'll
Yeah.
always have enough, that it works. And it's like still always, but the next thing and the
Yeah.
next thing, right? Versus, okay, this is enough, and then we rest, or this is enough,
Yes.
and then we celebrate. So, and maybe we can tie that into the soothing you were talking about
Yeah.
before we recorded.
Yeah. So I think we have to define hustle culture a bit before we go into the
Okay.
enough number, which is hustle culture makes us think that we're not doing enough. We're not making enough. We don't know enough, right? And we're just not enough. So there's this
Yes.
constant feeling of lack of worthiness, of like what I'm doing is not valuable enough.
Yeah.
And so that not knowing enough, you're constantly learning, consuming podcasts, books, the next program. And so it's just all, you're just over consumption of learning, information, and noise. And you can't create if we don't allow ourselves to digest and integrate what's coming in. The not making enough, right? Like, oh, I am only worthy and a valuable coach if I make X amount of dollars. And I try to think about, even for example, like Olympic athletes and their coaches. Many of those
Mhm.
coaches are not Olympic gold, silver, bronze
Right.
winners, but they're amazing coaches. But it's just like in the business coaching world, and we can kind of really just
Mm.
hook so much worthiness around the metrics of money. And I
Mm.
just think that it really F's people up like big time. And so to unhook ourselves from hustle culture, one practice that I do for myself, and this is like an every 6 to 12 months practice. It's not a just do it once and then forget about it. Like, because our needs change over time, but is the practice of knowing your enough number
Mm.
and to define what is enough in a certain season of your life, and really thinking about and doing the math. For someone, for me, I'm like a visionary, a creative, a spoken word poet, a lover, like all the things. And knowing your numbers and math, especially if you are a business owner or in, a body of work where you're having to be responsible for numbers and metrics and all of that, is knowing what it costs to sustain your life. Truly, truly. And there are so many clients and so many people that I've worked with where they don't know that number, and then they can't get clarity in anything else. And so knowing the
Yeah.
number and doing the math and busting out those spreadsheets and having things calculated of like, what does it cost to sustain my life? And also knowing the meaning behind the metrics, because we also have these amorphous, ambiguous numbers of like, I want to make 6 figures. I want to make 7 figures. And
Right.
then all of a sudden you jump from 7 figures to 8 figures. I'm like, you're building a unicorn company? Like, really? Like, you need that or you want that? Or like, is that true? And like, do you know what it takes to like build and create
Yeah.
and at that level? But we kind of throw these numbers around and we don't know what, we haven't given the money a job and
Yeah.
meaning. And so when we start to identify, like, why do I want $100,000 or 500,000 or a million, like really allowing the meaning of like your money why, like I talk about this of like kind of coming up with your money why statement of like, I want to make money because I want to make $500,000 because, and actually having statements of why you want to make the money that you want to make, and go do the research to do the math of how long does it cost you to go to that
Yes.
trip in Tokyo or that trip in Paris, or
Right.
like truly, because I just think that we make up these numbers and I am guilty of it. I was like, I want to make 6 figures in 6 months and retire my husband. And like, just mental note, please, folks, stop trying to retire your husbands or partners, like truly, truly being able to do that. So I just think that that piece is so important for us to like really land in the number of what is enough in this season of your life,
Yeah.
knowing that it can shift and change in those different ways too.
I have heard that a lot also. My goal is to retire my husband.
Yeah.
Totally.
And I had it too, and I did it, and it wasn't helpful. Like, it actually disempowered him in being able to
Mhm.
have his own sovereignty, and he didn't like it. He's like, "Oh, I actually don't want to be a stay-at-home dad. I want to build something meaningful. I want to use my gifts and my talents too." And so it's such an interesting pathway, but I drank the
Yeah.
Kool-Aid of 6 months and 6 years, or not 6 months and 6 figures in 6 months, and retire my husband. Like, those were dreams of mine. And I
Mhm.
did them. I didn't do the 6 months. It took 18 months, but like that piece, that's that external hustle culture
Yeah.
telling us how we define what success is.
I love that. So the know your numbers, and you said when people don't know their number, they can't get clarity on anything. And yet people don't. Why do you think that is? Why is that such an avoidance? Is it just math or is there more going on?
Yeah, there's definitely math. And then there's emotional stuff
Mm.
underneath. So many times we
Yeah.
think that our business problem is a strategy problem, and we just need to talk to the right coach or take the right course or read the
Mm.
right book. And if you're in resistance and avoidance, or you ostrich around money, it's very normal.
Mhm.
I can raise my hand. I am a very similar person. And I have just learned to surround myself with really compassionate coaches, therapists, bookkeepers, even. Like, I know something about
Mhm.
myself is I would get my P&Ls emailed to me and I'd be like, ignore, like, it's done. I'm not going to look at it. And so what I learned is I need to work with bookkeepers where I schedule a live call with them.
Yeah.
and that they're compassionate. And it's like this is just data, it's just
Mhm.
information, and I'm a verbal processor. So all of those pieces, it's like we need our support system in place if you're facing avoidance. And another piece is there might be emotional pieces that are blocking you that need to be acknowledged before you can
Yeah.
actually move into doing the math. So there might be some guilt, some shame, some embarrassment, lack of confidence, or something happened. So we might need to also
Yeah.
move a story, a moment, an experiment, or experience to reframe that a bit, so we can kind of move the emotional stuckness to then be able to be like, oh, okay, like it doesn't have to be so heavy on my chest, and I can just do the math. But sometimes there's clearing that needs to happen
Yeah.
first.
Yeah. So when you're working with your clients, I kind of want to assess your magic. And, you talked about being an immersive creator, you talked about craving intimacy. So I have some ideas, but when you're working with your clients and you're able to really see what's underneath the avoidance, because I know
Mm-hmm.
that's part of what you do. I know I've experienced the incisive questions that you ask. How do you get that information? Is it like, do you know it in your body? Do you feel it in your heart? Do you like get a click of, oh, there it is. That's the connection. How do you experience that?
Yeah. So I feel that at one, I'm a deep listener. So actually, all of my coaching calls with my clients when I do one-on-one
Yeah.
work is audio only. We might be on
Mhm.
Zoom and I have a Google Doc, but I'm actually listening for
Mhm.
nuance and like a change in
Mhm.
tone or pace. So I listen, and also creating space to allow like the truth to rise to the top, because so often coaches are like, I'm also a longer kind of coach. Like I'm not a 15-minute
Mhm.
quick spot coaching or 30 minutes. And I
Yes.
also work with my clients for a long time. Like I have clients that I've been working with for 5, 6, 7 years. And
Wow.
so there's deep intimacy and trust, very similar to like an Olympic coach, right? It's like I really know what matters, like where's your heart. I know your gifts and your strengths, and I know like these little squiggly places, these little subconscious patterns that you sneak into. So there's a deep knowing and understanding of just the essence of who somebody is, what they care about, and I can really hear that in people's voices. And so I'm a deep listener. I'm also super curious, right? So I'm just asking questions, and I'm also a bit of a shape shifter. So I meet the moment of what's needed. So sometimes
Mhm.
I've got my consultant business strategic hat on, and I'm like,
Yeah.
this, and next steps that, and blah, 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 and like, here's a timeline, and we're done. And sometimes it's like, ooh, there's like some emotions here that need some space to be
Mhm.
witnessed, and meeting people with a lot of compassion. And I
Mhm.
would say the reflection, like I just led a 3-day retreat with my clients in She Builds Collective, which is my high level business mastermind.
Mhm.
And there was an echo of like what their insights and takeaways were. And the echo that I get often in the space that I create is people feel safe,
Mhm.
they feel seen, and they feel supported.
Yeah.
And when we really see someone and we create the safety for them to be witnessed in their fullness and their wholeness, then people can really drop into being able to allow themselves to be their truest selves and be honest about what is going on. And I do it with my daughter, like just creating a safe space.
Yeah.
I'm like, Zoe's mentor, like, who are your safe people? Just like that's what you really need to find, or
Yeah.
who are your safe people? Where are the safe spaces where you can hear your own voice and your truth in that piece? And so I just think that I guess those are my magic parts, is like people just feel seen,
Mhm.
they feel safe, and they feel
Yeah.
supported, and can just let all the mess out, so then we can get to the heart and the root. And I always say I'm like a little bit of a functional MD as a business coach. I'm like, I just want to
I
get to the
love that.
root. Like, and
Yes.
there's no like every solution is custom for that person. I'm just trying to get to the root cause of
Mhm.
where are we stuck, And it could be a
Yes.
strategy problem. It could be a team thing. It could be time. It could be vision, or it could just be like an emotional block and resistance. And so I'm just looking for the root. And then intuitively, I'm going to find the plan that works for them. Like I can activate
Yeah.
people into action really fast.
Love it. I was thinking when you were craving intimacy, and I know you do small retreats and you really get close and personal with your clients, that screams compassion magic. It's like,
Mhm.
and obviously, you've got a big old heart on your book cover. It's like the love and the compassion is the non-judgment, and it's
Mhm.
also like fierce boundaries, like really clean energy. And the other thing I heard when you said the audio is vibration, like listening for the vibration. And that's also a magic, right? Like speaking in energy and being able to reflect back, not just what someone's saying, but the energy they're coming from.
Yeah, and I've gotten this reflection from a few very like high level spiritual, intuitive priestess advisors of like, my nervous system feels so calm in your presence.
Yes, that tracks.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. So, a word about soothing. That feels like a good segue, this calm
Yeah.
nervous system. If people are listening and they want that, they want a calm nervous system, they want to be the person that brings that kind of energy into the space. What have you been learning about soothing lately?
Yeah. I'm going to share my example, but I almost want to take it back for listeners too, a bit of how do we get a little access to the calm, because it's actually the solution is different for every person. And then I'll share my
Mm,
example of how I do it
okay.
for myself. So one, right, when we're trying to calm our nervous systems, there's an invitation to co-regulate with someone
Mm,
else who already has a calm nervous system,
yeah.
right? And so sometimes I have to tap out if I'm not feeling calm and grounded with my daughter, and my husband will tap in. Like, I'm good, I'm
Mm,
regulated, let me like go in that way. And so really co-regulating with safe people who have regulated nervous systems is very helpful. Calendaring in, scheduling time for the soothing is important. So if you're very ambitious and you are on the hustle
mm,
culture hamster wheel, of really allowing yourself to schedule the soothe time, if your natural inkling is to kind of over function on the work
yeah.
side of things. And I actually have been guilty of that, where it's like work is fun, it's exciting, it's
Yes.
validating, I love it. And so if your work naturally will overflow in your life, you actually want to schedule the things that you say that matter that are not happening. So I have a weekly couples meeting with my husband. We call it a couples
Mhm.
huddle, where we
Yeah.
appreciate, we celebrate, we look at our calendars, we look at our to-do list and really align. And then I schedule my soothe time. And I created this practice this year called move and soothe, because I'm very resistant to exercise and like, I don't want to go, and all of these things. But I'm like, if I pair it with soothe, so it's like move and soothe. And so I created this practice of moving my body at least 30 minutes. And it could be outdoors, it could be a gentle hike, it could be a walk with my dog, it could be on the treadmill, it could be taking a class, but then I get to soothe. And the way that I do that, I go to a gym where there's a sauna, there's a steam room,
Mhm.
there's a hot tub, there's a cold plunge, I take a shower.
Mhm.
And as we've moved into the winter months and the Western hemisphere of darker days, the light is shorter, I could hear in my own body, and there's been a lot of intellectual outputs and a lot of travel and family time and college applications. And I'm like, my nervous system is already moving. Like, I just need to soothe and slow down. And so instead of move and soothe, I've just been doing soothe. And so it's like, oh, I have a vision workshop tomorrow. I'm going to go and soothe. Oh, I did the vision workshop and put big output. I'm going to go and soothe again. And yesterday I went, and so I went to the gym for 4 hours to just soothe. There was no like physical movement except letting the water hold me, letting me float,
Yeah.
and not needing to earn my rest, not needing to earn my calm. And that like, and also if we can find these moments to slow down and get quiet, because I will also see people in the sauna and they've got their like cell phones and their, their pods in their ears. And I'm like, when I'm soothing, it is my moment to get quiet and just to hear my own breath, my own voice, and to breathe. And so for me, it's a moving meditation to soothe.
I love that. You don't need to earn your rest. So good. So, and you mentioned the vision workshop.
Yes.
And so you have the anti-hustle vision workshop, and this is something people can do on their own, right?
Yes. Yes. This is self-guided. In 75 minutes, you could have that future vision that I wrote for myself. I actually read my 3-year future vision to my business partner when I was selling simple green smoothies.
Mm.
So she could really understand, like, it's not you, it's this vision. Do you know what I mean? Like, and really get to like the heart of my why, because she just hadn't imagined that we would do this company without each other. Like, so it was like, it was hard to break and part.
Yeah.
So giving yourself this, and this is like a great time of year to be able to slow down and really connect to what's being called from you, not just in your like company or your career, but also the contribution you want to make in the world, how you see your relationships that matter to you, your physical environment, your home life, all of those pieces. And so I have very specific prompts for you to just journal and connect. And so if you go to shebuilds.com/vision and then put in code sourced, you will get it for free. You don't have to pay anything and can just have
Amazing.
a quiet vision date with yourself.
Thank you for that. I know, your book is excellent. You make simple things that people hate doing feel fun and easy and straightforward. So I am sure it's excellent. Y'all go get the workshop. Let me know how it goes. Like, what do you create when you sit down to vision in this way? Jada, if you imagine someone kind of listening to this and maybe they're living in their in-laws, or they're in that place where it's like, okay, I know I'm meant for something more. I'm creating something in the world, and yet my situation doesn't look like that. What would you say to them?
It's interesting because it just circles right back to connect to your vision. Truly, truly,
Mhm.
that's what my husband and I did when we were struggling and negative in our bank account, like didn't have a dependable car. And it felt like the last thing I could do is dream big. Like, I just want a car that doesn't break down. But
Mm.
there is actually neuroscience that when we write down what it is that we want, that we desire, then our brain does this thing called encoding. And then there's a value tag where it's like, this matters. This is important. Hey,
Yeah.
human, I know things are hard. Go do what you need to do, but I'll be in the background working on this, accessing some magic for you on your behalf because you said this matters and this is something that you want. So the power of writing down your vision, and you don't have to do all of these woo-woo practices and look at it and read it every day. Like, truly just
Yeah.
write it down at least once. But once you do it, you're going to want to keep redoing it. And there's so many ways to vision. So it doesn't have to be the written version, right? It could be a vision board that you're calling in visual images. There's a couple of practices inside She Builds. Like, for me, it's like there's different modalities and ways of getting to like, what is it that you really want?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, find practices, spaces, and safe people for you to truly get connected to what it is that you want right now
Mm.
and what's being called to be created next. And that if you could just like answer
Amazing.
that question, I just feel like we can have that deep exhale.
Amazing. Thank you, Jada. Thank you so much for saying yes to this. And thank you for who you are. I'm really, really grateful for your body of work and can't wait to see what's next.
Thank you, Darla.
Bye, everyone.